All right. So give it about 30 more seconds, guys. Hmm. Is there a way to make me like the main person?
Like on the view.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, if you go up to the top right corner, hover view, and then change it to speaker view,
Speaker view. Okay, does that make it to where
then it should be you and then the
speaker
rest.
view? But then how do I make me the focus? Um, yeah, guys, we're just picking this up as we go along. This whole Zoom thing. Um, but let's go ahead and get started. It's been a minute. My name is Trevor Ramos. I'm the author of How to Get Free Money for College. I'm the one that brought you guys here. I put this webinar together for obvious reasons. So, my practice is helping parents of high school students getting scholarships and grants to pay for college. So, I try to get them to avoid student loan debt. But I do get a lot of questions from parents and families about what to do when you already have the student loan debt or the plus loan debt, or any of these kinds of educational loans. So I've brought in Tracy Horoskin. She's a financial advisor, and I'm going to have her, or she's going to do a presentation just on some different ways that you can address student loans and how to go about understanding the system. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to learning as much as you guys are. I'm definitely not the guy for this, but I try to put you guys in front of the right people. That's my thing. So without further ado, I'm gonna give Tracy the stage. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you. It is not allowing me to screen share.
Oh no, okay, fix that. Um, so I guess I go back to making you the host now.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so Trevor, will you confirm that you're seeing the correct screen?
Yeah, I see it. This looks good.
Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Well, excited to be here. Student loan is not a fun topic to be discussing, but we're going to try and have a little bit of fun today. But I appreciate, Trevor, your time and your ability. Oh, I'm going to admit, I'm going to have to keep. I'm going to keep an eye on admitting people because I think as if I'm the host. Anyway, let's get started. So we're going to talk. Our roadmap today is we're going to talk a little bit about the problem. We're going to talk about um, being prepared to address the problem. And then we're going to talk about ways to address the problem. Okay. So that's kind of our roadmap for today. So let's just take a quick look at what's going on in the student loan situation today. So there are a lot of loan debt out there. There's over $44 million. I'm sorry, 44 million Americans have student loan debt. Some of the three top categories that we find when we're working is the attorneys, the doctors, and the dentists. Those are typically some of the largest debt holders as far as student loans go. So we want to address that. But the reality is, their student loans can address your short term, can impact your short term goals and your long term goals, and we don't want that to happen. So, one of the things that I wanted to address and help just with some education today is helping you understand what really is your most valuable asset. So, we're going to watch a quick, just like a 1.5 minute video so that you can address and adjust your thinking when it comes to thinking about debt. Okay, so let's get started on that.
Throughout our lives, we accumulate assets. And as the value of our assets grow, it's important that we protect them from loss or damage. Let's take a moment and think about your most valuable assets. What about your home? How much is it currently worth? Let's say $500,000. Most people would agree that it makes sense to insure their home, so I assume that you have homeowners insurance, correct? Do you own a car? And how much is that worth? Maybe $25,000. And does it make sense to have it insured? Then there's your personal property, maybe a boat, expensive electronics, jewelry. How much is your personal property worth? Let's say $80,000. Have you insured those items as well? Finally, have you considered what is truly your most valuable asset, your ability to earn an income? What's your annual income? Now think about what your income is worth over time. Imagine over the next 30 years what your income could amount to even without annual increases. Your ability to earn an income is in fact your most valuable asset. What's more, it's your income that makes it possible for you to pay for all the other expenses in your life. Doesn't it make sense to insure your most valuable asset? Contact a Guardian representative today to learn more about income protection.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. We're not going to be talking about insurance and all that kind of stuff today, but I thought it was a great video to lay a foundation for where our priorities really need to be when it comes to debt. Because the reality is, if your income isn't protected and you become too sick or injured to work, there's some problems. So I thought I would just go through a quick summary of what your solutions are so that you can understand what that protection would look like. So one of them is state or federal disability. Now, there are only 5 states that have state disability, and I'm based in California, and that's one of them. But there's a lot of states that don't have any kind of disability income protection. The other ones would be, of course, group disability. If you have, so when you are looking at your job offers and your job options, make sure that you are looking at group disability and sign up for it. It might be $3 a month. So definitely want to sign up for that, because that can help your income stream continue if you become too sick or injured to work. The problem with that is that regardless of your income situation, you're still responsible for paying those student loans. And that can be, money can get pretty tight, because these disability programs only typically pay up to about 55 or 60% of your income, and then that would be taxable. So it's really important to understand what your options are. Another option is an individual disability income insurance policy. And the main reason I'm bringing this up is because these have what are called oftentimes a student loan protection rider. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. So if you were on disability and you had one of these policies, then you actually would be reimbursed for that student loan payment up to the maximum benefit. Even if you have multiple loans at multiple institutions, it doesn't matter if they're private or if they're federal or whatnot. So you can kind of get a feel for some of these. Some options as far as what those dollars amount could be. So it's important to understand that you're not only protecting your income, but you're protecting your income such that you would not necessarily have to be responsible for paying those student loans if you became sick or injured and you were not able to work. When are you the most exposed? It's typically the first 10 years of your career, because typically your income is at its lowest and your student loan debt is at its highest. Eventually that will cross over, but during the first 10 years is typically one of the biggest exposure times. So let's just take a quick look at Ryan, a quick little study for Ryan. He is a physician. He is yes, he's single, ladies. So anyway, we won't get there, but his starting salary is $211,000. He was able to get a disability policy that would protect him a total of $30,000 a year. 10,000 starting off because of his lower income, but in the future he could increase that up to $20,000 as his income grew. And the main thing that we're talking about today is he was able to get this protection, student loan protection of almost $1,900 a month that based on his student loan debt, etc. And again, both federal and private loans. So this gives you just some ideas of how you can look at these types of things and understand that, hey, you know what? Ryan really took advantage of some of the system, right? Not only do we have to understand the student loan system, but we need to understand what's out there so that we can make sure that we are identifying what that looks like for our situation. So should you just pay off your student loans? Now, a lot of people think, yeah, I should just pay them off. They're just really bugging me. They're emotionally debilitating for me. And I totally understand. But what we want to make sure is you're looking at the difference between wealth accumulating assets, assets that allow you to accumulate and grow your wealth, versus depreciating assets, assets that decrease in value. And when we're looking at these types of debt situations, we really look at them as good debt versus bad debt. And so the bad debt are the depreciating assets. Those are things like cars, RVs, timeshares. Credit cards aren't really an asset, but they're used to buy assets, but they're typically depreciating assets. Computer equipment. I mean, this laptop I'm working on today is going to be worth like nothing in a year and a half, most likely, right? So we have to understand that bad debt is what we want to pay off, high priority, right? If we have a credit card that has 25% interest, pay that off, right? Good debt, on the other hand, are assets that grow in value, like vacation homes, rental properties, etc. A lot of people don't really think about it, but education is good debt because it's allowing you to earn more over your lifetime compared to those that do not have that education. And so that allows you to understand that when we think about student loan debt and our education, we need to be thinking about it as far as a wealth accumulating asset and not worrying as much about paying it off, but about managing it and keeping our priorities straight. So now that we've really understand that it's an appreciating asset, let's take a quick look and get a reminder of what are you facing when you graduate from college? You are facing a lot of different choices. You're facing, saving for retirement and asset allocation and financial planning and stocks versus bonds and, all of those types of things that are floating around. How do you deal with all of it and where are the priorities? I'm going to give you just 4 quick little priority steps that should help you in your overall purpose. And then we're going to dive into those student loans. So number 1, protect your todays. Just like the video talked about, you protect your car, you protect your home. We go for our annual physicals, we protect our health, which is very important. We want to protect our todays. And making sure that and that's first priority, even though it's not fun, but it's first priority. Second priority is becoming a world-class saver. Saving is critical. And so often what we find is people put paying off debt as number 1 and then saving is number 4. And if that happens and you have all of your debt paid off and nothing saved, then typically you will then go back into debt because you have no what we call a life events fund. We have no way of identifying what that looks like and really determining, hey, this is where I'm in an emergency. My car transmission went out and I have to deal with it. I can't get back and forth to work. So I'm going to have this life events fund, which was a part of your saving strategy, so that you can deal with those emergencies and or opportunities of investment opportunities, etc. And then last but not least is living debt free. And it can be step 4 because step 4 allows you to live debt free because you have those first 1 through 3 in place. Okay, hope that's helpful. So let's talk a little bit about reducing your student loan debt. So basically, if you went to student aid you will find these income driver repayment plans. So the reality is that there are 4 different main ones, although 2 of them are very similar because they, one is, it's basically a revised one. But basically, these plans each have different components that allow you to consider prior to enrolling them, as things like the terms, the monthly payment, the tax filings, etc. Forgiveness is a major consideration, so we want to make sure that you're taking that into place. But let's just talk briefly about each one of these plans, and you can dig in more. And there's calculators on this studentaid.gov website, etc. And then I have some resources also for you. So this revised pay as you earn repayment plan is very similar to the next one. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here. It is a repayment plan where the monthly payments are equal to 10% of your discretionary income divided by 12. So that's your monthly payment. It is based on your adjusted gross income, AGI, and then your family size and your total student loan balance. Now, each of these have these footnotes down at the bottom, if you can see them. I can get you these slides if you are interested, that some of them work for certain loans, some of them work for parent loans, some of them don't. So if you have a Parent Plus situation, give me a call, we can talk about that. But this revised as you pay program is a great program. The pay as you earn, very similar, because it just has, the other one just has a few slight revisions, so we're not going to go over that much. Income-based repayment plan is a plan where it's generally equal to 15% of your discretionary income, 10% if you're a new borrower. So a new borrower is somebody, and that I'll explain that in a quick minute on the next slide. Then you also have an income contingent repayment plan. That is where the monthly payments are the lesser of, okay, what you would pay on a repayment plan with a fixed income, or 20% of your discretionary income, okay, divided by 12. So those are some key considerations when you are thinking about repaying the loans. A lot of people just automatically just start paying them off. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, but it's kind of like trying to pay cash for your house. And that, really, it just doesn't really work in the way our world is designed and situated. And so the reality is understanding what options are there, and the refinancing options and the repayment options. Repayment plans are not refinancing. These are just ways that the government is allowing you to, in a sense, elongate your payments. Most of these are about 25-year terms. And then you would have a balance at the end. At the end, the balance typically would be forgiven. So let me show you a couple case studies that I think would be helpful for you to understand how these types of situations work. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about refinancing and give you a few key tips for this one. So how do you decide if you're going to refinance? It's kind of a big decision. The things that you want to be looking at is the terms of the refinance. So it's kind of like in a mortgage, where a lot of people talk about, well, 15-year mortgage versus 30-year mortgage. What should we do? What are our goals? Do we want to have it paid off before we retire? All of those decisions and the terms actually play into your overall financial situation. So it's important to understand that. Secondly, the interest rate. Obviously, that's critical. If you look at the reality of the interest rates, even, and how much they fluctuate, and how over 25 years or 30 years, a very small difference in those interest rates can be pretty significant as far as the ability to save money and make it work for you. Thirdly, the monthly payment. Now, if you to stick with the home ownership analogy, if you go to a realtor and maybe a lender and talk about being able to purchase a home, typically they look at all of your finances and they tell you what's that lump sum you could qualify for. As a financial advisor, I always tell people, listen, that's important. However, you need to go in with understanding what you want your monthly payment to be, because it's very easy in these situations where you're refinancing, whether it's student loans or a mortgage or even a car loan, right? That you could qualify for more than what you really can handle in your budget because you have other priorities. You have other things you're trying to accomplish in life instead of just paying off student debt, right? So we talked about that, the Protect Your Days, the World Class Saver, the Life Events Fund, all of those things need to be a part of it. And so the monthly payment is very important to consider. Now, the total cost, not as critical to consider, although people get tripped up with that. If you think about your mortgage over the course of 30 years, those mortgage lenders don't typically tell you how much you're going to pay over the course of those 30 years because you don't want to know. I mean, you just don't, because the reality is there is a cost of borrowing those funds, right? And so when we look at student loans, oftentimes we get really tripped up on the total cost of the repayment with the interest, et cetera. And it can be a little derailing for what we're trying to accomplish in the big picture. Okay. So let's look at a real life case study of a client of mine. She's a dentist and she has both private and federal. So we were discussing refinancing her private loans only, and I'll explain why in a moment. So if she chose not to refinance, and this is what most people do, they choose not to refinance because they don't know where to go. They don't know what options are out there. You hear about them on TV or on the radio, if people listen to radio anymore, pop-up ads on Facebook or whatever. But the reality is most people just don't take the time to do it. So in this case, if she chose not to refinance at that moment, she would have paid $520 a month for 11 and a half years. This is just her private loans. Her private loans are like 1/6 maybe of her full loans. Okay, so this is pretty significant. Her total costs over time would have been a little over $74,000. Now, when we looked at potentially refinancing, she would pay $467 a month for 10 years. So very similar monthly. But because the interest rate was significantly lower, her total cost was only $56,000. Now, what she ended up doing was being able to save over $18,000 just on interest alone. And that was doable for her, that because it was going to be $500 a month, etc. So this is just an example of a way to refinance private loans specifically. Now, the reason we chose not to refinance her federal loans, because there are these repayment options. And for federal loans, there are things that come up that oftentimes loans can get deferred for a certain time frame for a certain purpose, etc. You never know what a new administration in Washington, D.C. is going to do with federal loans as far as forgiveness and etc. So it is a big thing in politics these days. So oftentimes it makes more sense to maybe not refinance your federal loans, but look at these repayment options instead. So let's look at this case study with the federal student loans. So this individual, again, had about, I think it was about 464, let's see, I wrote it down here. Yeah, 464,000 of federal student loans, okay? Her payment, just if she's just started paying normally, would have been about $7,000 a month. That's a lot of money. Now, is she making money? Of course she's making money. She's a dentist, but she just started out. So if you remember that exposed chart, her income's low and her exposure of debt is super high right now. And the reality is she's got to figure out how to figure that out and pay it off and also protect that. So we looked at what would be a good repayment solution for her. And the revised pay as you earn repayment plan was going to be the most effective for her after we ran the numbers. So what happened with this dentist was she started her new job in September. Okay, September of a particular year. So she only had that last quarter of income. And then the next year was when she had to start repaying her loans because she had that 6 months from graduation, blah, blah, blah. So her income was very low for that first year because she only had a job for a quarter. And so her student loan payment was based on her income from the year before. So her student loan payment was only $190 a month during that first year. Now, if you think about 7,000 versus 190, that's a huge difference, right? What did that enable her to do? It enabled her to protect her today's. If we look back at that chart, it allowed her to save so that she can get a good life events fund going and save for things she wants to do, like potentially opening her own practice, potentially relocating, potentially getting married, all of these different life events that are going to be coming up in her life that if she was paying $7,000 a month, she would not be able to do. Okay, so that 190 is only for the first year because it's based on, again, her previous income. So the second year, you have to reapply and recertify every year for these loans solutions, these repayment solutions. So she would do that and an estimation was going to be about $1,200 a month after that. And that would be about that every year with maybe about a 5% increase each year on that payment amount. So she was thrilled, honestly, because she thought she was just burdened down with this whole concept of $7,000 a month of federal student loans. And she just didn't know where that was going to come from. And she was so discouraged because she didn't know how else to accomplish these other things in her life that she wanted to accomplish. So again, the thing that we don't really like to look at, but the reality is the total loan costs a little over $700,000. And it was for 25 years of payments. At the end of 25 years, she had about $425,000 that could be forgiven at that time, according to how the laws are set up today. Now, and again, according to how the laws are set up today, that $425,000 would be taxed as income in the year it's forgiven. Now, that is under a lot of scrutiny as far as in the student aid legal system and figuring out, is that going to be realistic? These repayment plans have not been in place long enough for one of them to get to that point for those 25 years. So we have yet to have a case that comes up in our legal system, et cetera, to be argued and to determine what that looks like. So I have a feeling that over the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to be hearing more and more about this forgiveness situation. Because we're talking about forgiveness in these repayment plans. We're not talking about forgiveness, which we're going to talk about in just one moment, but this is just for the masses. You don't have to be working for a public service or a nonprofit or anything, but it's really just based on these repayment plans, whereas they're saying if you can show the consistency and pay for that 25 years and stick within the rules and recertify every year, et cetera, then whatever the balance would be at that time would be forgiven. That's another reason why sometimes it makes sense to not refinance the federal loans, because there is that potential forgiveness. So it is a very intricate discussion about federal versus private and what that looks like. Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit about that overall forgiveness program that the student loan programs have put into place, put into law in 2007. So the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. Okay, so this is a program that really encourages borrowers to enter into and continue in full-time public service employment. Okay, so one of the things that I think is important to understand is that we're not talking about what you do in your job, but we're talking about who is your employer. Okay, it's really comes down to who your employer is, of whether or not you qualify for this public student loan forgiveness program. So I'll just give you a few. Government organizations at any level. So it'd be federal, state, local, even tribal, that if you work for a government organization, then this potentially is available to you. Also, some of those ones that, if you're working for a nonprofit organization that are tax exempt, these 501c3s, et cetera, potentially could be available for the public service loan. If you are serving as a full-time AmeriCorps or Peace Corps volunteer, also would count as qualifying. Now, the ones that don't qualify would be labor unions, partisan political organizations, and for-profit organizations, including for-profit government contractors. Okay, so again, it's not what you're doing, it's who you're working for that really is the difference. Now, you might have been reading ahead on the slide, which I totally understand. There is a very high rejection rate due to non-compliance in the application. So it's very important to work with a professional. I do not do these applications, but I have resources who do help you with that. But about 98% of these applications were rejected in 2017, 2018. So it's really important to make sure that you are completing these applications correctly so that you can qualify. Now, you would have to, so you can read this here, but it says it forgives the remaining balance of their direct loans after they have satisfied 120 qualified payments. Okay, so that's some, oopsie, oh dear, how did that happen? So that is something to consider and understand what that looks like. There's a website down here that you can look at. There's some articles. It is a very, very controversial, but yet a very helpful part of our student loan programs here in the United States that should be considered if you end up in one of those qualifying employers. Okay. Okay, so where do you start? Where do you start? So number one, what I have found is most people just don't take action. They oftentimes get out of college, they have this debt, they're excited about their new job, or they're having trouble finding a job, and then all of a sudden these student loans become due and they start either stressing or they start paying them or whatnot. But the reality is there's a lot of options like we talked about today. You're not supposed to walk away from this seminar being as an expert at student loan decisions and refinancing and all that. So you need to get some professional help, just like Trevor helps people get the student aid, etc. If you find yourself in a situation where you have student loan debt, do not hesitate to get professional help. A financial advisor like myself can help you evaluate your assets and your needs and your future and your liabilities and help you walk through that process to solve them in the right order. There's also student loan consultation firms that will help you in looking at refinancing, that will help you evaluate which of those repayment plans are the best in your situation, etc. I've worked with them on numerous cases and they do a great job. So don't hesitate to get financial and professional help. I'm going to throw my contact information up on the screen. You are welcome to jot that down. I'm more than happy to provide a complimentary 30 to 45 minute consultation with anybody that has questions about their student loans or about finances in general, to be able to get you on the right start and help you take action and take that step so that you can have the reality of the good life, your good life for the rest of your life. That's our firm's mantra, is a good life for the rest of your life. So that's what we want to help people with. And student loans are a big part of that. I have to put up this disclosure slide because I'm securities licensed and I'm required to do so. But I am going to turn this presentation back over to you, Trevor. And I know we finished a little bit early, but early is much better than being late. So I just wanted to see if you had any closing words, and we could let these people get back to their days. Oh, yes, I forgot I had to do that, didn't I?
Okay, folks. So we are recording this webinar, and for that reason, we have to, in order to get us even to be able to do this webinar, we had to, you know, stick to the format, stick to the slides. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Tracy or you can reach out to myself. Most of you guys found out about this through Facebook, so you can message the page. So that's my page, and I will forward your question over to Tracy. Or, you know, if you have something for me, we can handle it. But other than that, really appreciate your time. And again, if you have any other questions, you can reach out to us. Take care.